In an interview with Time magazine, President Joe Biden was asked whether Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is prolonging the siege of Gaza for his own political gain. Biden responded, "There is every reason for people to draw that conclusion." This comes after the Times of Israel recently reported that an aide for Netanyahu told families of the hostages currently in Gaza that Netanyahu's government will not agree to end its war in Gaza in exchange for a deal to release those remaining in captivity. We should say that was a week ago. Two far-right parties that are part of Netanyahu's governing coalition are explicitly threatening to quit the government if the deal is accepted, which would then collapse the Netanyahu government entirely. All of which makes it odd that Netanyahu has been extended the extremely rare privilege of addressing the United States Congress as soon as next week by all four bipartisan leaders of Congress, particularly given the fact that one of them, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, has already called for Netanyahu to resign. And the fact that Netanyahu has spent his entire career actively working to get Republicans elected over Democrats here in the U.S., to say nothing of the moral catastrophe that his war in Gaza has wrought on Palestinians, or the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court is seeking an arrest warrant for Netanyahu on allegations of war crimes. Senator Bernie Sanders is independent Vermont. He's chairman of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. He recently announced he will not be attending Netanyahu's speech before Congress. Senator, was the Democratic caucus in the Senate given input into this decision to invite him, or a heads up?
Of course, that's a good question. And to the best of my knowledge, there has been very, very little debate on this decision. I think I speak not just for myself, but for a number of other senators who think that that decision is a very, very bad one. You do not honor a foreign leader by addressing a joint session of Congress who is currently engaged in creating the worst humanitarian disaster in the modern history of this country. Obviously, as we all know, Israel has a right to defend itself against Hamas terrorism and the terrible attack of October 7th. But what it is doing now is going to war against the entire Palestinian people. And what we are seeing now is starvation and famine impacting thousands and thousands of children. The architect of that policy is not somebody you honor by bringing to the United States Congress, in my view.
I want to play for you something that the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, had to say about you specifically, because I want to give you an opportunity to respond. He's one of the four leaders that invited Netanyahu. And this is what Speaker Johnson had to say about your objections to Netanyahu coming. Take a listen.
This is a time to choose a side. If Bernie Sanders wants to side with the terrorists, that's so be it. And if other Democrats want to do that, it's on them. But I'm telling you, I pray and hope and expect that most of the members of the House of both parties and the Senate will join us for this historic address.
What do you say to being accused of siding with the terrorists if you do not join?
I mean, it is a disgusting lie. He said it yesterday. He said it again today. And I guess, you know, if you are part of the MAGA group, right-wing Republicans, big lies, what you do, you just say lies over and over again, and you hope people believe them. As I have said from literally day one of this terrible war, what Hamas did is atrocious. Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, is a war criminal. He should be in jail. And Israel had every right in the world to defend itself against Hamas. But what Johnson is doing is what right-wing people always do. Back in the day, if you stood up for civil rights or social justice, they called you a communist. If you are prepared to take on Netanyahu's outrageous war against the Palestinian people, I suppose now they claim that you're sympathetic to terrorism. It is a lie, and I really am not happy with what he is saying.
It's more than rhetoric. I should note that the House today, a bipartisan vote, a minority of Democrats voting for this provision, I think only about 40, and a vast majority of Republicans voting for it. They passed legislation today that would impose sanctions against the International Criminal Court for its move to issue arrest warrants for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other officials for war crimes in the nation's war against Hamas. The bill is unlikely to get a vote in Democratic-controlled Senate, but since I have you here, I suspect you would not support that, but I want to ask you what you think about the House passing.
I mean, needless to say, I wouldn't support it. And it's a terrible idea. But the function of the ICC is, Chris, as you know, is to implement international law. Geneva Convention, and other laws that were established after the horrors of World War II. Last year, the ICC said that Putin is a war criminal, which I believe he is, kidnapping thousands of Ukrainian children and starting the worst land war in Europe since World War II. He is a war criminal. Recently, last month, they said that Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, is a war criminal for having started this war and the terrible atrocities against innocent Israelis. He is. But you know what? Netanyahu, who is now bringing about an unprecedented humanitarian disaster, destroying housing, the infrastructure, the healthcare system, and creating conditions in which thousands of children could starve to death, you know what? That is a violation of international law as well, and he should be charged with that.
The president came forward and announced an endorsement of the contours of a deal that had been a deal, as far as my understanding, and there's a lot of back and forth on this, so none of this is, it's a little hard to nail down, but the contours of a deal between Israel and Hamas for release of hostages in exchange for a cessation of hostilities, essentially, for some period of time, and then maybe that transitions. It seemed he was attempting to try to stop both sides from backing out of the deal publicly. What is your reaction to him attempting to do that, and do you have hope that this could happen?
Well, look, I disagree with the president's general policies toward Israel and what's happening in Gaza, but he is trying on occasion to do the right thing. And I think anyone who is aware of the level of suffering and destruction now in Gaza wants an immediate ceasefire. You need massive amounts of humanitarian aid to save, thousands and thousands of children. And of course, Netanyahu, as usual, undermines the president of the United States. And by the way, let's all be clear. This is not some abstract war being fought in another part of the world. We are, to a significant degree, as Americans, our tax dollars are funding this war. So what Netanyahu is saying, oh, by the way, Mr. President, thanks for that $10 billion for unfettered military aid, but we're not going to listen to you. We're not going to do anything you want. And, I think that's outrageous, and that's, reason number 465 why he should not be invited to speak to the joint session of Congress.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you.